With the first pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select
Trophy Chase, Arizona.
with the second pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select
Cody Smith, Houston, Texas. The fantasy draft room is now on the clock.
Welcome to the Fantasy Draft Room. I am Chase, and with me, as always, my man Cody. We got a back and forth 2-round rookie mock based on a actual NFL mock that you created on PFF.
Yeah, that's right. PFF has got this awesome tool where you can go through, simulate an entire draft. You pick a team, you can draft through all of their picks. Normally, probably for a bunch of fans who want to, make their picks for their team. But we figured it could also service a purpose in the fantasy landscape where I just put myself in the place of the San Francisco 49ers who don't pick until pick 99. So they're way down there. A lot of picks that they could be making wouldn't matter for a 2-round rookie mock for fantasy. And so I just drafted all defensive for them and let the pieces fall where they would within the simulator. And they created some interesting landing spots for us, a lot of difficult choices. So it'll be interesting to see how the actual rookie mock would take place if this simulation were to actually replicate the NFL draft come May.
Yeah, man, it's going to be a fun one here. Let's pull up that board here. So I'll go with the 101 pick. And as we look at these picks here, we have 4 first-round quarterbacks all in the top 10. And then we also have Bijan in the first. We have 4 first-round wide receivers as well, kicking things off with Quentin Johnson at the 105 to Seattle, Jordan Addison to Pittsburgh. We have Zay Flowers to the Jags, and then JSN to the Dallas Cowboys. So we got some first-round tight ends as well with Dalton Kincaid and Michael Mayer. Just wanted to show the board a little bit here so we can kind of get an idea of where these players landed. Now, at the 101, there is a debate here, but I am going to pick Bijan Robinson at the Cincinnati Bengals, or with the Cincinnati Bengals. If this happens, I don't think Joe Mixon's going to be around come September. So most likely they're going to be moving on from him, giving him that role. Power, super high powered offense, lots of weapons around, can't stack the box. Joe Burrow is going to be able to do a lot of things in the passing game with him, and I feel like the ground game would just thrive. So 101, Bijan, where you at 102?
I can't disagree with you there on Bijan. Even if Mixon is there for the first year, I think you can even still make the argument that he would still be the 101. I mean, Bijan's just an otherworldly talent that we haven't seen in the league since Saquon, more than likely. So I think that's still the right pick there. And then it comes to me where I've got basically the choice of quarterback here as we're kicking off our super flex drafts. And this is where it gets interesting. Do you take the steady road with the 2 prospects of Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, or do you take the upside long shot with Anthony Richardson going number 9 overall to the Carolina Panthers, still getting top 10 draft capital? I think we're going to shoot for the upside shot here, and I'm going to take the upside swing on Anthony Richardson. I think a lot of people don't give him credit for as much as he is. He has some progression to do as a passer, but he isn't as raw as a lot of people like to say, in my opinion. And so Anthony Richardson with the rushing upside here will be my pick at the 102 if this were to happen.
Yeah, if he is a top 10 pick, he's going to be, the 109. They're investing heavily in him. His legs are just so unique. His physical body is that of Cam Newton as far as size. The dude's just built. But he runs like a Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick. Like, he has the spin move. He has a lot of agility, and he doesn't take those big hits that you see these typically larger quarterbacks take. So, I do not blame you at all. And I'm going to stick with quarterback here, and I'm actually going to make a little bit of a surprising pick. For most is I'm actually going to take Will Levis at the 103 here. I do like Will Levis. I feel like he got a bad rap this year. I feel like the foot injury really came into play a little bit more than anticipated. But if he ends up in Las Vegas where you have a Hunter Renfrow, they're probably going to tag Josh Jacobs. You're going to have Devontae Adams and Darren Waller. Like they're not a quarterback away from winning like the Super Bowl or being competitive, but that offense is a quarterback away from being fun. And I feel like Will Levis with that offense would be fun. They do have some pieces to replace on the offensive line, but man, I feel like we've we've kind of soured on a down year from Will Levis, and I feel like that rushing potential is still there, not super high upside like Richardson, but I really do think that I could see myself taking Will Levis 103 here.
Man, yeah, that is surprising. I know the
Shocker.
community consensus is going to hate
Yeah,
that one. We
we
might
get
get
roasted.
we might get some comments in on that one, calling for your head. But I do think the rushing side with Levis is a little bit underappreciated. It's still not where I would have gone if I was there at the 103. So I'm glad that you left me my choice of Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, both of them getting top 5 capital. I do have the Texans jersey behind me, and so I could lean with Bryce Young, but I'm going to go with the guy who actually just has the
Traitor.
size. Yeah, I'm gonna go against my team. I'm a pessimistic fan, and we'll see how that works out there. But I think a little bit more is in place in the offensive side of things with CJ Stroud in Indianapolis, where he's got Shane Steichen, he's already got Michael Pittman there, he's got Jonathan Taylor. We'll see how this Houston Texans team goes forward. But with the size concerns of Bryce Young and with the better landing spot, I think, in Indianapolis immediately, I'm going to go with CJ Stroud here at the 103.
Yeah, I debated hardcore with on CJ Stroud or Will Levis with this pick. So yeah, I do not blame you at all. Great situation for CJ Stroud. So at the 5, I'm going to take the last remaining quarterback, and that's going to be Bryce Young to the Houston Texans. Size concerns are real. He is little, and I feel like that's where I've pushed him down a bit. I just don't. I think he can do it. I have zero doubt in my mind that he can, but there is that potential of him failing, and if the size is going to be a problem, how low are you on him? Would you have he's obviously going to be going in the top 3 here. Like, is there a situation other than the Texans where you're like, okay, I really want Bryce Young as my first quarterback if he went to Indy or if he went to Vegas?
No, man, the draft capital is so similar. Obviously, with this draft, with running the simulation, you're not going to have any trades or anything. So there could be a potential of somebody trading up to the number 1, which could, sway some people if somebody's going to put the amount of capital in that it would take to get up to the number 1 to maybe take a Bryce Young, say the Raiders or the Colts or the Panthers were to put that capital into Bryce Young. I think there's a little bit more of a discussion there. But with what we're seeing here, I just don't think it's enough for me with the concerns that Bryce Young does have to bump him up. But it's truthfully a coin flip. I mean, any of these 3, Young to Levis, Richardson's the only one that really stands out to me just with the rushing upside that he does have, like we were talking about earlier. Any of these 3 could hit, and I would be fine. Honestly, like if you were actually sitting there in your draft at the 103 and you had all 3 of these guys on the board, I would say you could probably trade down and just pick the last one that's remaining.
I'm with you. If they're all top 10 picks like this, they're all invested in highly. I'm with you 1,000%. So where are you at with pick 6? No more first round quarterbacks for you.
And this is where this particular draft, how this one played out in the NFL draft, it's gross, man. Like I had to look at this board for a long while before I even came to I still don't even truly have a full consensus here. I mean, normally you would say probably Jahmyr Gibbs right here, but he's falling all the way to the second round in Tampa Bay. You could argue that probably Leonard Fournette would be gone in this situation if they are going to take Jahmyr Gibbs here at, in their second round. But man, I'm not a big Quentin Johnston fan, but you're going to tell me he is top 5 draft pick capital as a wide receiver to the Seattle Seahawks. I know it's not for maybe immediate production. We'll see what that role would be. But if you have DK Metcalf and Quentin Johnston lining up on sides of the ball, good luck covering those 2. And you're going to throw Tyler Lockett in there as well. I'm actually just going to go with the draft capital here, and I'm going to pick Quentin Johnston here at the 106.
And I'm so happy you did. I mean, I don't blame you. Top 5 picks, as a wide receiver, tough to pass on. And, I think the next pick for me is tough to pass on because of the situation that kind of unfolded in this draft. And if you're telling me that Zach Charbonnet and Jahmyr Gibbs are going to get similar draft capital, and Zach Charbonnet's backfield competition's a little bit better, you're going to have that potential with Anthony Richardson and Carolina. I just think that's going to be a fun one. I know there's another running back there later, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't think it's as big of an impact with Roschon Johnson in the 4th. I'm going to take Zach Charbonnet here at the 107. That's your guy.
My guy, you are full of surprises. Taking my guy, Zach Charbonnet. I did not think that that was going to be the pick. I mean, I love some Zach Charbonnet. I'm going to be going against the grain, saying that he is my RB2 in the class over Jahmyr Gibbs. But with this draft capital, I don't know if I could do it. I mean, you've got Chuba Hubbard, you've got Zach Charbonnet there, you got Roshan taken here in the 4th round as well. It would be crowded, but this isn't something we've seen before. You know, some people might be thinking, you know, oh, it's just a PFF simulator. This would never happen in the actual draft, but we've seen these type of things happen before. The San Francisco 49ers, just like 2 years ago, took Trey Sermon and Elijah Mitchell in the same draft when nobody thought that made any sense. So teams will just take running backs to take running backs whenever they can. And that would be a scary team. If you've got Anthony Richardson, Zach Charbonnet, and Roshan Johnson running at you for an entire game, that defense is not going to want to show up, and they are going to be hurting the next day. So, I mean, probably not where I would have gone with Zach Charbonnet here, but I can't diss it too much because I do love the talent, and that'd be a scary proposition for those Carolina Panthers here come next year. With that one, though, you know, we're looking at Jahmyr Gibbs is probably going to be the next one off the board here, but looking at the wide receivers, just in case if there's anything else, Addison to the Steelers looks like a crowded backfield spot. I mean, maybe you could say that they, you know, trade away Deontay or something in the draft. That would be a wild scene if that happened mid-draft just to come back and pick up Jordan Addison. But I don't think I'm going to project that here for this one. I'm just going to go with the guy that, I mean, Zach Charbonnet, I have him at 2, but Jahmyr Gibbs is literally right there neck and neck with him, going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a spot where we could easily project to say that Leonard Fournette wouldn't be there. And I think he's miles and miles ahead of Rachaad White. That's not even a close competition. So I am going to be going here with Jahmyr Gibbs at the 108.
And I'm perfectly good with that. That was, you know, I was looking at the two situations, looking at those two backfields. I just seemed like there's a little bit clearer path with Zach Charbonnet, since, you know, they did take a 2nd-round running back last year with the Tampa Bay Bucks and Rachaad White, and then also having Leonard Fournette still on the team. Most likely that would mean he is cut or traded, or they figure out something with him. But I'm really glad that you left me somebody here, because I am going to take Jackson Smith and Jigba, who landed with the Dallas Cowboys in this scenario here. And, you know, we just did a film session with Ray, Destination Devi. Again, patreon.com/allgas. Get in there, check it out. He did a great film breakdown on him. Not only is he an incredible, you know, receiver, he's also a really good run blocker. And so, you know, he's going to fit in really well with that team. They need a number 2 in the most desperate way. And the fact that, you know, he's going to be a rookie, he's going to have CeeDee Lamb most likely, you know, taking the double coverage if there is one. I just think that's going to be a smash spot for JSN.
Yeah, I think that's easily the next pick off the board. Has to be JSN there. He's the next guy up by miles up. I think he'd be a decent fit there with the Dallas Cowboys. They definitely need somebody else as a pass catching weapon in that offense, and JSN would fit in perfectly there as the last wide receiver in the 1st round. There's 2 guys ahead of him, but those situations with Addison to the Steelers and Flowers to the Jaguars, both of those just feel incredibly crowded. But it is going to be where I'm going next, is going to be between those 2 wide receivers, Jordan Addison, number 17 overall to the Steelers, or Zay Flowers to the Jacksonville Jaguars at pick 24. And that situation in Jacksonville would just be too crowded for me to lean that way. So I am going to be going with Jordan Addison. You know, he's not going to be taking over the as much as, you know, not George Pickens stands here. George Pickens would still be, you know, he'd still play that role. Jordan Addison isn't going to go outside and just, you know, be that large alpha, quote unquote, alpha type wide receiver outside. But I think Jordan Addison could be a guy that would fill the Deontay role here in the next year or two if they wanted to move on from Deontay at any point. And so I'm going to lean with Jordan Addison here at the 110.
I love it. I do think that's a situation. Not only does Pittsburgh draft wide receivers well and develop them, I feel like they'd have a plan in place, whether it would be this year or next year, with Addison. So, yep. Zero complaints there. Now, this is kind of where things get sticky for me. You know, we've gone through this is like a tier break in this mock draft, right? We've gotten all of our first round capital off the board with the exception of Zay Flowers, who's in Jacksonville. We do have a couple first round tight ends, and we play in tight end premium, so we're always going to assume a 1.75 to give those tight ends value. Dalton Kincaid with the Giants would be a good fit. Michael Mayer going to the Kansas City Chiefs with first round capital to replace.
Talk about that one.
Like that's an interesting one. So we'll get to that one here as well. But for this pick here, I'm actually going to dig a little bit deeper, and it's going to be I'm full of surprises today. It's a guy we've talked about a lot, a guy that I'm really excited for, and that's going to be Josh Downs going to the Los Angeles Chargers. And I feel like this is going to be a situation where they are going to be cutting Keenan Allen this offseason to save, I believe it's like $13 million in cap space for this upcoming season. He's going to be gone. And Mike Williams is Mike Williams. He's not going to all of a sudden become some superstar, 190 target guy. I think that Kellen Moore offense that Josh Downs could fit into perfectly. I would just be ecstatic to have Josh Downs tied to that offense. And with this mock situation, I'm going to take the speedster out of North Carolina.
All right. Yeah. Josh Downs I'd like to see a little bit better capital with Josh Downs, I think is the only thing of why he'd be falling this far. It is one of the good landing spots that we are actually seeing on this board. Probably the next best landing spot if you're looking for immediate production. Like we said, assuming that Keenan Allen would be cut, which we assume will happen within the next couple of weeks here. But yeah, I can't argue with you there. Josh Downs would become a focal point of that offense. The only thing holding me back there would have been the draft capital, but cannot fault you at all for going there with Josh Downs. And I was going to stop you there before you made the pick, but you were so convinced on it. Then you told me I was going to ask you what tight end premium we were going to be using here, a 1.75, and that's where you start to get to heavy premium, and these tight ends start mattering a lot more. So with that information, then you definitely got to be considering Kincaid and Mayer here, both being first round tight ends. Man, I don't know what people would do if Michael Mayer actually gets taken here to the Kansas City Chiefs with the last pick, is they're kind of like, that just pick where you can do whatever you want. You're just sitting there and you're like, we're just gonna, that luxury pick. You can just take Michael Mayer whenever Travis Kelce does decide to hang it up. I still think he's got a lot more years in him, probably 2 or 3 more years at least. But maybe they know something in the front office. Maybe he's kind of told them behind the scenes, hey, I've got one, maybe 2 left in me. And I know I was talking about going either Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison on the last pick, but with the information that we're going to be sitting here in a 1.75 tight end premium draft, I'm going to do it. I'm going to play the long game in a 1.75 with Michael Mayer here to round out our first round at the 112.
Yeah, Michael Mayer for me is tight end 1 in this class. It's really going to be difficult to bump him off. And if he is a first round draft pick like he is, landing spot, again, long game, right? Yes, we understand that Travis Kelce is there. Maybe they use more 2 tight end sets. You don't invest a first round draft pick in a player and not put them on the field. So I would imagine that he is on the field. They do like to use 2 tight ends. Noah Gray's on the field quite a bit. They use Blake Bell in the past. So there's going to be a second tight end. If they have another pass catching weapon like that, I love the pick. Landing spot makes it tough just because who knows what kind of production he's going to have. And I'm looking at Dalton Kincaid here. First round draft capital. He is a very, very good pass catching weapon as well. Yep. Going to the New York Giants. I left you the tight end choice because I was like, I'm okay taking either one. You leave me one. I will take Dalton Kincaid here at the turn. And I know this is going to be crazy, right? People are going to be like, oh my goodness, how can you have 2 tight ends so high? 1.75. And I know it might be a little bit early for some of these, but at the same time, when you see some of these other landing spots where you have, second rounders are all out of the way, basically for the running back position, you have a bunch of third rounders there. I get Zay Flowers as well, but again, that's going to be a crowded situation. I think I'm okay passing on. So yeah, I'm going to take Dalton Kincaid and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely would have been my next pick as well. I think once we're settled in that we're playing in 1.75, I mean, he's going to step into immediate production there. That would be some people's probably difference between taking either Kincaid or Mayer with the first tight end selection in this draft, if it were to play out this way, because you've got one guy that's going to be tied to Patrick Mahomes for the rest of his career. And then you've got one guy who's going to step in and probably be I like Daniel Bellinger, but he's not a he's not a first round draft capital worthy wide receiver, worthy tight end at all. So Dalton Kincaid would step in day one there and be an integral part of that pass catching weapons devoid offense. So definitely really like the Kincaid pick there. And then you leave me with going back to the wide receiver where I'm finally getting back into that Zay Flowers type. And I think there is, I'm not personally in on him either, but Kayshon Boutte would also be one to consider here going to the Chicago Bears in the back of the second round. He would probably step in and project as the number one in that team from day one. But I'm going to go with the first round draft capital, the guy that I think is a much better prospect. I'm not fully convinced on Calvin Ridley coming back and just assuming Calvin Ridley type numbers after he's been out of the game for a year and a half. So I'm still going to go with Zay Flowers here and hope that he can carve out a role in this offense that is crowded. But I like the prospect profile of Zay Flowers.
I do too. He's an exciting player. He's, analytically, he has a lot of production. It seems like he has the size. The landing spot for me is what kills me. I feel like if Zay Flowers does go to a good landing spot with first round draft capital, I'm going to be all over it. Like if Zay Flowers would have went to Dallas, would have been fine with it. Same thing. Zay Flowers, like to any of these other situations, I would have been good with it. It just makes it tough when you have, Zay Jones already on the team as that number 3, bringing in Calvin Ridley and then having Christian Kirk. What's that target share going to be like? They love the tight end as well. So, but yeah, at this point in the draft, totally good with it. So the next pick, you mentioned Kayshon Boutte. I wasn't sure if you were going to bring him up. Going in the second round of the Chicago Bears, probably the number 1 right away, as you mentioned. Tank Dell is actually the first wide receiver off the board in the second round, but he went to the New York Jets. So who
another
knows?
Crowded spot. And
another crowded spot. Quarterback situations. Will Elijah Moore come into play? Another second round wide receiver. Size concerns about Tank Dell and what he can actually do at the NFL level. So I can't quite go there yet. And then we have a bunch of third round running backs. So I am going to do a shocking reach here. I'm just full of freaking surprises. I can already tell I'm going to get roasted in the comments, but I'm going to be taking Kayshon Boutte. I know there's a few people that love it, but if he goes to the Bears and he has the potential to be a number 1, he does get, top 60 draft capital, just outside the top 50 basically. So I like the talent. I do. It wasn't great this year. And I don't know really what he's going to be. And I feel like that's the thing, is he could work out really, really well, or he could bust and fall out of the league. And I'll just take the shot on him at this point over some of these other landing spots and some of these other guys with their draft capital, and just hope for the best with Kayshon.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying it's contentious, but I think this is the first pick that you're actually going to gain some fan favor with. So, I mean, maybe you just had to reestablish a little bit with the people again and take a lot of people's Debbie Darlings and Kayshon Boutte. I'm glad you took him because it would have been difficult for me. So I am a little bit more out on him. I'm out on Justin Fields as a throwing the ball. I think he's a good quarterback in front of the line of scrimmage. We'll see if he can develop with an actual pass catching weapon like Kayshon. But glad you took him there, and I don't think that's a bad pick at all. Here's where we're now looking, like you were mentioning, with Nate Dell probably being the next guy, the only guy left that is getting round 2 capital at the wide receiver position. You got some other tight ends, but they're in some spots that don't look all that great as well, even though we do like the profile athletically of a Luke Musgrave type. I'm going to go back to the running back position here, and I'm just going to go with the team that I think is actually a perfect spot for this type of running back. I'm going to go with Kendre Miller out of TCU going to the Buffalo Bills in the 3rd round. Love us some Kendre on this channel here at TFDR. He's in both of our top 5s right now. Unfortunately, we won't get to see him test at the combine, and did say he's not doing any testing there. Hopefully he shows up and at least does some interviews and stuff like that, so he can, talk to these teams, show where he is physically and health wise. But Kendre Miller, love the talent, and they need a power back there in Buffalo. And I think Kendre Miller would be the perfect fit for a Buffalo Bills offense.
Yeah, I'm with you 1,000%. I was hoping I'd sneak through because he went at the back of the third. Maybe you wouldn't be as in on him. But yeah, and this is a very real situation that we could see with Kendrick. Kendrick could slip in the draft because he's not going to test at all before or before the actual NFL draft, it sounds like. So this is a real possibility. He could slip into the late third and be a potential value for a really good team. And now we're looking at some of these other situations. Dwayne McBride going to the Dolphins in the third round. And I like the landing spot and they need a running back, but it's just, I don't know that I love Dwayne McBride enough to vault him up here. I'm looking at this point when we have a bunch of guys in a similar range, right? I'm looking for what is unique, what is special. And there's no one that has the special speed of Devon Achane. And I know he's in Houston, right? There's already Damian Pierce, but he was a fourth round running back. I'm going to take Devon Achane here. I imagine that this is actually a good place for him where he has somebody else to take a workload from him, where he's not taking 20 plus carries. Sure, we would love that. But what I want at this point is I'm looking for that home run. And if he can give me a home run, especially in best ball, all for me for some Devon Achane in the mid second here.
Yeah. I mean, with Pierce here, he was fantastic in that Houston Texans offense last year, but Devon Achane would come in and be an immediate part. It's going to be a timeshare, but most positions in the NFL are timeshares as we're seeing them right now. So cannot fault you at all for the pick of Devon Achane. He is that guy who's just going to hit home runs for this offense. You just pound Damian Pierce into people and then you let Devon Achane run by him. I actually love the fit more from an NFL for an NFL standpoint, but Devon Achane would be a very good fit here for the Houston Texans. We'll see what the upside would be in a fantasy football setting, but cannot fault you at all for a Devon Achane pick in the middle of the second. Even though he is in the third round, I love me some Devon Achane out of my Texas A&M Aggies. Let's see what pick we're up at here. We've got the 206 is the next pick up. And I think I'm going to go back to the running back position. Nate Dell just doesn't do it for me. I'm not a fan of the small, undersized guys, even though he is in the second round. I'm going to go with a guy that I think landed in another good spot, just like the Buffalo Bills. It's going to be to the team that was in the Super Bowl last year. I actually have to go back and watch myself some Tank Bigsby because I did not come out that impressed the first time I watched him. But then I ran all of my metrics and I did everything, and he came out as like my RB6. And so Tank Bigsby going here in the third to the Philadelphia Eagles. Miles Sanders is out of town. He's just sitting there with Kenny Gainwell. I know he showed out well in the playoffs, but I think Tank Bigsby would come in and be an integral part of that offensive running game from day one.
Yeah, I love the pick. I've looked at the landing spot as well. Looking as far as need, fits perfectly. And now I'm again, it's getting dry, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's still some talented players. The situations may not be the best, or draft capital may not be the best. Tank Dell with the Jets, I still just the profile itself doesn't do it for me quite yet, where I'm going to push him up over some of these other running backs, and maybe even a tight end here. Gosh, I feel like Dwayne McBride is the right pick just because of the landing spot, but I feel like I'm relying too much on landing spot at that point. So who I'm actually going to take here is I am going to take a fourth round running back, and I am going to take Tyjae Spears, who ends up with the Denver Broncos. Now that situation is not ideal. Denver obviously has Javonte Williams. However, it actually might be better than it seems on the surface, because they did bring in, Sean Payton, excuse me, geez, drawing a blank on my own head coach. They did bring in Sean Payton, and he does like to use two back sets. And Javonte Williams is coming off of a torn ACL and LCL, which does take a little bit longer to recover from. So he might actually end up in a situation where he gets on the field early. Not that he's going to take over a backfield, but he's going to potentially get enough touches to stay fantasy relevant, even when Javonte does come back.
Yeah, I mean, Tyjae Spears here, we love the talent, and weighing in or testing in higher than we assumed at the Senior Bowl. We'll see if he can do the same thing here next week at the Combine. But Tyjae Spears, it would just be how much of a market share of that running back room can he take away from Javonte Williams. Obviously, he's probably going to get a good amount of it whenever he does come out, just to start off the year. So he could smash the first couple of weeks and just vault himself up. People are wondering if Javonte is going to lose work to Tyjae at the beginning of the year. So yeah, I love me some Tyjae Spears, but dropping all the way down to the fourth does give me some concerns. But here in the middle of the second, cannot fault you at all for a pick of Tyjae Spears. You mentioned my next guy, though, and although he has a questionable pass catching profile, he only had 10 targets at his time in UAB, only catching 5 of them. That is not what we typically like for our running backs in the NFL and for fantasy purposes. But Dwayne McBride being a third-round pick here to the Miami Dolphins, where they desperately need a running back, they need a hammer. Dwayne McBride can perfectly serve that. If he's getting 18 rushes just straight up the middle, it's not going to be pretty every week, but he can be a Brian Robinson type for an offense that projects to be much more high volume than the Washington Commanders are right now. So I'm going to take myself some Dwayne McBride here in the middle of the second.
Yeah, the NFL seems to love Dwayne McBride as well. We've heard a lot from, I believe it was Mel Kiper, who's really high on him. I don't know where they have seen him privately, but apparently they are all really high on his ability to catch passes, despite the fact he had 10 targets in his entire career, as you mentioned. So not exactly what you want to see, but I can't fault you either. Like you said, we're at a point where you're taking draft capital and situation into play because a lot of these running backs are just narrowly separated. And that was a tough choice for me between Spears and McBride's, yeah. So I'm looking here. Sorry, as I'm reading through this, I'm looking at Tank Dell at this point again, and then just diving right back into running back. I think I'm going to take now. I am going to take the shot on Tank Dell. I'm gonna take Tank Dell here. If he goes, I mean, that's borderline top 50 pick. It would signify to me that they're going to have a role for him. And we kind of talked about it in voice chat today with Scott Connor about the fact that a lot of these guys, they do serve a purpose for a team. And even though he's drafted in the second round with high draft capital, he might just serve one purpose, but it is a very important purpose in the offense. However, it is not fantasy relevant. And that's what worries me about Tank Dell going to a situation like the Jets, is that he's going to serve a role. And that's about it, where he's not going to get a lot of volume. You might have some boom weeks from him, but if you're in a lineup league, you're probably not going to want to start him. He's not going to take over Garrett Wilson. That's, I feel like, is a certainty. And it's just going to be whether or not he can get on the field if Corey Davis is still there, and then also with Elijah Moore there. So rough situation for me.
Yeah, I mean, this is the point of this draft. If it were to play out this way, I don't think there's any good picks left. Like, this is where the cutoff would be in this middle of the second round. Once you hit all of these round 3 and maybe a round 4 running back in Tyjae Spears, you're just taking shots at the board at wide receiver. If you want it, I mean, Roshan, I like the talent, but being behind Zach Charbonnet in the same draft, maybe he could Elijah Mitchell, Trey Sermon, and, overtake him. But I don't think that's the case. I do love myself some Zach Charbonnet. I think he could hold off on his own there and not become the next Trey Sermon. But I'm glad that you picked Nate Dell here, because you left me the wide receiver that I actually wanted here. I didn't pick my Houston Texan before, but I'm going to pick the one that goes there now, and Jalen Hyatt in the third round, 65th overall out of Tennessee to the Houston Texans. This is a wide receiver room that desperately needs help. And Jalen Hyatt, for some people in NFL circles, is their wide receiver 1. So it's interesting here in this simulation that he's falling all the way down to round 3. I'm still going to take the guy that I think, if some people are saying that he is a first overall wide receiver off the board in the NFL draft, I know it obviously didn't work out this way in this draft, but there's got to be some hype around him for some reason. He is a burner out of Tennessee. I think they say he was running like a 4.31 confirmed out of high school. Yeah. And so he's got the speed. We'll see if he can develop a little bit more as a route runner, but with a situation that's as devoid as it is right now in the Houston Texans offense, I don't think John Mechie is going to come in and demand like the number one role in the Houston Texans offense. I think it's just going to be a dogfight between a lot of guys, and Jalen Hyatt could be the one who, a lot of people comp him to Will Fuller. You could see the next Will Fuller in the Houston Texans offense, and I would not be mad about that at all. So I'll take Jalen Hyatt here at the 210 to the Houston Texans.
Yeah, Jalen Hyatt, there's a film session again, patreon.com/all gas. Ray GQ actually just did a breakdown on Jalen Hyatt as well. And even watching throughout the season, I think I caught a couple games of him. It just didn't stand out or impress me much. Like it just didn't seem like, I didn't look at him and be like, oh, that's a Biletnikoff winner. You're right. Like it didn't pop for me like I thought it would. He doesn't. Some of his route running isn't there. He is fast, and I feel like that is a purpose he can serve. And he has a rookie quarterback with Bryce Young. Maybe there's going to be a good connection there. So I don't blame you, but I'm okay missing on what Jalen Hyatt could be. I think at least at this point in the process. You're leaving me some options here. We're looking at running backs. We're in the last two picks here of this round.
Last pick.
Yeah, this is my last pick. We have 4th round running backs with Roschon, Sean Tucker at the Patriots, Zach Evans with the Cleveland Browns. Man, oh man. I don't know if I can take Luke Musgrave with the Cardinals. I'm going to be another full of surprise pick for you here. I'm going to take Hendon Hooker.
Yes. Okay, we're good.
Dang it. Another your guy, Hendon Hooker going to the Patriots here. Yeah, you do. He's gonna be in a situation where he has 2nd round draft capital. He actually has a really big week ahead of him at the combine. Not because of his performances, but because of the ability to, his leadership abilities and things like that with the interviews. I feel like we're gonna get some medicals back on his knee, so it's gonna be a big opportunity for him. And the organization has already shown some sort of hesitation in Mac Jones. They've talked about they're okay trading Mac Jones because there's not that big of a difference between him and Bailey Zappi. I don't know if that is a positive for Bailey Zappi or a negative for Mac Jones, but if they're taking Hendon Hooker here in the mid-second or late second, to me, that signifies a team that is okay moving on from a quarterback that they've already drafted.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a Mac Jones guy, so I don't like the fit here with the Patriots. I think that Mac Jones does come back and figure it out while he has an actual offensive coordinator. Whatever you think about Bill O'Brien, I have my concerns, but it's got to be better than what they were doing last year with him. And, I guess they don't really take anybody here to give him some help in the wide receiver room if this draft were to play out this way. So that's a little bit of a hesitation as well, but maybe they make a splash in free agency or something like that. Probably not with the way the New England Patriots roll. So I do like the upside of Hendon Hooker. I think that he's saying that he's going to be ready by training camp with all of his medicals, whatever. He was at Radio Row doing interviews there. I'm with you that I think he's going to impress at the combine, doing the 2nd round of interviews with the NFL teams there, and he could rise up. But it's not
as I see this. My apologies. I actually was actually in the 3rd round at the 76th pick.
Yeah, 3rd round. So that's my bad.
That's all right. I might take that one back. So don't roast me. But it's been a rough day for me. So we'll leave it though. We'll leave it as Hendon Hooker. It's fine.
Yeah, we'll just say that he's taken with the 2nd round pick of the New England Patriots, and we'll leave it at that. So you're done. Good. You're good. It's my fault, my mistake. I'm trying to make this board up and make it pretty, and 2nd round of making mistakes here. But we're all good. We're gonna close this one out. And this is I'm glad you didn't take the guy that I wanted, because this is a first for me. This is a big moment for me. I don't know how many of these rookie mocks that we have done all the way back since I think like August when we were kicking off 2023 mocks, and I have never once taken this guy. I was listening to the shit show AMA last night, and our guy Iowa Michael is a big fan of the tight end that came out of his school. He goes in the 2nd round here to the Jacksonville Jaguars, Sam Laporta in a 1.75 tight end premium. I can get behind the fact that maybe they roll out Evan Ingram there for one more year. Maybe they put him on a franchise tag, something like that. And then Sam Laporta comes in and takes over that tight end role for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know my guy Iowa Mike is very, very high on his guy Sam Laporta, so I'm going to trust him with this one. He's saying he could even run the 4.5s. He thinks he is that athletic. I'm going to trust him. And for the first time ever, and probably like literally 100 mocks that we have done since the beginning of August, I will take my first ever share of Sam Laporta.
You know, I love Mike and Adam over there at South Harmon. I obviously am a Nebraska fan. I'm biased when it comes to this, but Iowa puts out some damn good tight ends. I don't know about Sam Laporta running a 4.5. If he does, that will change. That will change things. But yeah, this is a great landing spot. Him being in Jacksonville, most likely that means they're gonna, putting him in a situation with that Doug Peterson offense. I actually don't mind that pick at all. I do not mind it. I'd like that over taking Luke Musgrave, who is in a situation where they just drafted another tight end. So, yeah, if Sam Laporta runs a 4.5, we'll talk. But I think he had like a 4.78 out of high school. If he improved by a quarter of a second, then great. All for it. And I'm sure he'll be a damn good blocker in the NFL. But that wraps up 2 rounds here. Any last things you want to touch on before we get out of here?
No, man, this was one of the worst. Obviously, just the PFF simulation tool that's going to give us these landing spots, but this was the most difficult landing spot and rookie mock off of landing spots that I have done throughout all of this process. And you might be thinking, it is just a simulation. Some of these would never happen, and there's a couple of them that, yeah, they might be questionable, but the NFL draft is wild, and these things happen. The mock draft experts that we know and love what they do. They do a great tremendous amount of work for the NFL and for us fantasy football people as well. But they're wrong a lot of the time too. And the NFL draft is wild. Teams make decisions that aren't in their best interest of what we think is fantasy football people. They draft guys for certain reasons. They just really like the guy. They think he could be a locker room guy. And so they'll take another tight end whenever they already have one. They have different plans than what we see from the outside, and they have different views. So we have to prepare for situations like these. And I think this is actually a really good exercise to put yourself in one of the worst situations that I've seen and still have to make picks for 2 rounds. It put me a little bit further down in the 23 class. I might try to trade some of these picks back to 24, but a really good exercise here. And I like how this one turned out.
Yeah, I think I may have been a little overreactionary to some of the landing spots and to some of the draft capital. But that's going to happen. We see it happen all the time where we're like, oh my gosh, this person landed in Kansas City. He's going to thrive. It's going to be great. Or this player landed with 4 guys in front of him. It's good to practice. And again, it's just a mock 1.75 tight end premium. So again, that comes into account. And some of these landing spots with draft capital, do matter. So, again, a little overreactionary on my part tonight on a few things, but I'm okay with it. I feel like it's a good exercise.
No, not bad at all, man. There's some, you can argue some picks either way. There's a lot of these guys that are in the same tier. We don't even have near all of the information we will have coming out from the combine, from pro days, and then obviously the draft capital. We'll see if these landing spots could shake out this way. Probably not, but still good to go through the process. I don't think the picks were bad at all, man. I think you did a good job in this one.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Like you mentioned earlier, we're going to find out some of these landing spots where we hope a very good player goes into a really bad situation, and it's going to suck for fantasy purposes.
Oh.
So, all right, I'll wrap us out of here. Again, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for joining us here in the Fantasy Draft Room.